Nobody from my family came to my promotion ceremony. Not even my husband nor my children. They all went to my sister's art gallery opening instead. But when I walked off the podium, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband. "We need to talk urgently." If you've ever been abandoned by your own family on your biggest day, drop a comment below. Hit that like button if you're ready to see how Elizabeth Wilson made them all pay for choosing betrayal over loyalty. The corporate ballroom was filled with colleagues, executives, and their families. Champagne glasses clinked as the company's top performers were recognized for their achievements. Everywhere I looked, there were proud spouses taking photos, children beaming with pride, parents dabbing away tears of joy. Everyone was surrounded by someone. Everyone but me. I stood at the edge of the stage in my navy blue blazer and silver pendant, the one my mother gave me 15 years ago, clutching my award for Executive Vice President of the Year. At 38, I had clawed my way up from an entry-level marketing assistant to the second highest position in the company. This wasn't just a promotion, it was validation of 20 years of sacrifice, late nights, missed dinners, and weekend work sessions. I had done it for my family. For my husband David, for my twins Emma and Jake, now 16. They had promised they'd be there. Front row, David had said, wearing his best suit. The kids had rolled their eyes but promised to put on their fancy clothes and cheer loudly enough to embarrass me. "We'll be so proud, Liz," David had whispered 3 nights ago, kissing my forehead. "You deserve this moment." But now, as I scanned the audience during the ceremony, I realized something with a growing hollow ache in my chest. The 3 seats I had reserved in the front row remained glaringly empty. They weren't running late. They never came. When my name was called and the applause thundered through the ballroom, it felt distant and meaningless. I shook hands with the CEO, accepted my Crystal Award, smiled for the photographer, and delivered my prepared speech about teamwork and dedication. But inside, I felt like I was performing for strangers. As I stepped down from the podium, colleagues congratulated me with backslaps and handshakes. "Where's the family, Elizabeth?" asked Patricia from HR. "I thought they'd be here to celebrate with you." I forced a smile. They had another commitment tonight. Another commitment. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I finally pulled out my phone in the bathroom, hoping maybe there was an explanation, a flat tire, a family emergency, anything that would make sense of this abandonment. Instead, there was a single message from David, time-stamped 45 minutes ago. "We need to talk urgently." I stared at the words, my hands beginning to tremble. No congratulations. No apology. No explanation. Just that ominous sentence that every married woman dreads receiving. I unlocked the screen and saw another message. "I didn't want you to find out from someone else, but I'm at Rebecca's gallery opening. We've been seeing each other for months. I didn't want to ruin your big night, but I can't pretend anymore." The bathroom tilted. My knees buckled, and I gripped the marble countertop to steady myself. Rebecca. My younger sister, the artistic one of the family. The one who had always been jealous of my success, who had made snide comments about my corporate sellout lifestyle at every family gathering. David had gone to her gallery opening with my children, not just instead of my promotion ceremony, but because he was having an affair with her. My husband of 18 years, my twin sister, and my own children had chosen her over me on the most important night of my career. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My makeup was still perfect, my hair still styled immaculately. But my eyes looked hollow, like a woman I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath and typed back a single word, "Understood." Then I deleted the entire text thread, composed my expression, and walked back into the ballroom where my colleagues were still celebrating. For the rest of the evening, I played the part of the successful executive graciously accepting congratulations, while inside, something cold and calculating began to take shape. "Let's see how this plays out, David. I hope the art was worth it." I left the corporate ballroom at 9 p.m., my Crystal Award tucked under one arm, my phone deliberately silent in my purse. The valet brought my BMW, and instead of driving home to the empty house I knew was waiting, I drove across town to Rebecca's gallery. The Emerging Visions art space was in the trendy downtown district, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows I could see the opening in full swing. Wine glasses, cheese platters, people posing next to abstract paintings that cost more than most people's cars. And there they were. David stood near a sculpture that looked like twisted metal, wearing the charcoal suit I had bought him for our anniversary. He was laughing at something Rebecca was whispering in his ear, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. She wore a flowing black dress designer, no doubt funded by the trust fund our parents had set up for both of us. My twins, Emma and Jake, were there too. Emma was taking selfies with her phone, clearly posting to social media about how cultured she was. Jake was slouched in a corner, looking bored but present. Present for Rebecca's moment, absent from mine. I parked across the street and opened Rebecca's Instagram. She had been posting throughout the evening. The gallery, the artwork, the amazing turnout. And then I saw it, a photo that made my blood run cold. David's arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera. The caption read, "With my muse and inspiration. Some dreams are worth waiting for. 井号 New beginnings 井号 Love wins 井号 Art is life." Muse and inspiration. 18 years of marriage reduced to a hashtag about new beginnings. I scrolled further and found more evidence of their betrayal. Photos from restaurants I recognized, places David had told me he was having, client dinners. Weekend trips he claimed were for professional development. All lies, all documented in Rebecca's need for social media validation. But the most damning evidence was a video Rebecca had posted to her Instagram story 3 hours ago, tagged with the location and time. David helping her hang paintings, kissing her neck while she giggled. In the background I could see Emma and Jake arranging programs and wine glasses. My children knew. They all knew, and they had conspired together to make sure I would be alone tonight. I screenshot everything before the stories could disappear, my lawyer's training from business school kicking in. Then I drove home to the house David and I had bought 12 years ago with our combined savings and my signing bonus from the promotion to senior director. The house was dark, exactly as I'd expected. I walked through rooms filled with family photos, vacation memories, and the life I thought we were building together. But now it all felt like evidence of my own naivety. I sat at the kitchen island and opened my laptop. For years, David had handled most of our joint finances, claiming he was better with numbers. What he didn't know was that I had been quietly monitoring everything through my access to our investment accounts and bank statements. Corporate executives don't survive by being careless with financial details. I opened several browser windows simultaneously. Our joint accounts, my separate business account, the stock options from my recent promotion, and the real estate documents for our house. David thought he was the financial planner in our relationship, but I had been building a safety net for years without realizing I'd need it. Most importantly, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Insurance Documentation, but it contained much more than that. Screenshots of David's text messages with Rebecca from his iPad, which synced to our home computer. Credit card statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants. Even a few recorded phone conversations, perfectly legal since I was a party to the calls where David lied to my face about his whereabouts. I had been collecting evidence of his deception without even realizing it, simply because I was thorough about household management. Now I was going to use every piece of it. I pulled up 3 documents: a contact list of the best divorce attorneys in the state, the employee handbook from David's engineering firm, which had strict policies about moral conduct, and Rebecca's business registration information for her gallery. David thought he was having a secret affair with my artistically gifted sister. What he didn't realize was that Rebecca's gallery was partially funded by a business loan that I had co-signed 2 years ago, back when we were still playing Happy Sisters. And David's engineering firm had explicit policies about conflicts of interest and moral turpitude policies that extended to activities that could embarrass the company. I spent the next 4 hours methodically preparing. By dawn, I had created a timeline of their affair, documented their financial vulnerabilities, and prepared a strategy that would dismantle their fantasy piece by piece. David had made a choice. Rebecca had made a choice. My children had chosen their sides. Now it was my turn to choose. And I was choosing to fight back with the precision and ruthlessness that had made me the youngest executive vice president in company history. When they woke up tomorrow, their world would begin to crumble. And unlike my promotion ceremony, I would make sure they had a front row seat to watch it happen. 3 days passed in strategic silence. I didn't respond to David's texts asking where I was staying. I didn't answer Rebecca's calls. She had the audacity to call, probably wanting to explain or offer some pathetic justification. I ignored my children's messages asking when I'd be home. Instead, I worked methodically from the corporate apartment the company provided for visiting executives. During the day, I performed my duties as EVP flawlessly, attending meetings and managing my team. But my evenings and mornings were dedicated to something else entirely: strategic destruction. On Friday morning, I walked into the offices of Henderson, Clark and Associates, the most ruthless divorce law firm in the state. Margaret Henderson herself took my case after reviewing the evidence I had compiled. "This is remarkably thorough," she said, flipping through the documentation. "Most clients come to me emotional and unprepared. You've built a case that would make our investigators proud." "I've had practice building business cases," I replied calmly. "This is just another project that needs proper execution." That afternoon, I sent a carefully crafted email to the HR director at David's engineering firm. The subject line read, "Confidential report, employee conduct concerns." The email included time-stamped photographs of David using company credit cards for personal expenses with Rebecca, documentation of his lies about client meetings that were actually dates, and evidence that he had been conducting personal business during work hours. David's company prided itself on ethical standards. They wouldn't appreciate discovering that their senior project manager was embezzling company resources for an extramarital affair. I sent the email from an anonymous account I had created at a coffee shop downtown, but I made sure the documentation was irrefutable. By Saturday morning, the first domino fell. David's LinkedIn profile changed to "Open to New Opportunities" by 3 p.m. Rebecca posted a series of increasingly frantic Instagram stories about unexpected challenges and staying positive through difficult times, but she didn't specify what those challenges were. I knew because I had also sent an email to Rebecca's business loan officer at First National Bank. The loan she had used to fund her gallery expansion was personally guaranteed by both of us as sisters. But the loan agreement had a moral turpitude clause, standard in business agreements, that allowed the bank to call in the loan immediately if the borrowers were involved in activities that could damage the bank's reputation. A documented extramarital affair that broke up a family and involved financial impropriety qualified. Sunday evening, I received the first crack in their unified front. Emma called me, crying, "Mom, where are you? Dad's acting really weird, and Aunt Rebecca is freaking out about some bank thing. Everyone's fighting, and nobody will tell Jake and me what's happening." For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for my children. They were 16, old enough to make choices, but not old enough to understand the full consequences. Then I remembered them laughing and posting selfies at Rebecca's gallery while I stood alone at my promotion ceremony. "I'm handling some business matters, Emma," I said calmly. "You and your brother made your choice about where your loyalties lie. Now you'll need to live with the consequences." "What are you talking about?" "Mom, this is scary. Can you just come home?" "The house isn't my home anymore, sweetheart. Your father and aunt made sure of that. But don't worry, you'll all land on your feet. Rebecca is very creative and your father is resourceful." I hung up before she could respond. That night, I received a text from David. "Elizabeth, this has gone too far. I lost my job, Rebecca might lose the gallery, and the kids are scared. Can we please talk like adults?" I stared at the message for a long time. Like adults. As if I hadn't been the adult in our relationship for years while he played games with my sister. I typed back, "You wanted to talk urgently last Tuesday. I listened. Now I'm talking and you're listening. The conversation will be over when I decide it's over." Then I blocked his number and went to sleep in my corporate apartment, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets and the satisfaction of a plan being executed flawlessly. Monday would bring the next phase, and David would discover that 20 years of marriage to a corporate strategist had taught me exactly how to destroy someone's life with precision, patience, and perfect legal protection. They had underestimated the quiet woman who worked late and handled the family's administrative details. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was thinking I would accept their betrayal gracefully. There wouldn't be a third mistake, because by the time I was finished, they wouldn't be in any position to make one. By Monday morning, the carefully orchestrated collapse accelerated beyond even my projections. The weekend had been particularly revealing. I spent Saturday at the office, ostensibly catching up on quarterly reports, but actually monitoring the digital footprints of David and Rebecca's crumbling world. Social media had become their confessional, and I was documenting every desperate post, every plea for understanding, every attempt to rewrite history. Rebecca had deleted most of her Instagram posts from the gallery opening, but screenshots live forever in the cloud. She posted a long, rambling story about unexpected business challenges and learning who your real friends are. The comments section was particularly illuminating, several people asking where David was, others mentioning rumors about financial impropriety. The art community was small and gossipy. Rebecca's reputation was being destroyed by whispers and speculation. Meanwhile, David had attempted to reach out to his former colleagues, hoping someone might offer him contract work or a reference. I knew this because his LinkedIn activity was visible to our shared professional network. 3 different connections had forwarded me screenshots of his increasingly desperate messages, asking if I was okay, and if there was anything they should know about David's sudden departure from his firm. I maintained professional discretion, simply stating that David and I were going through some personal changes, and that any questions about his employment should be directed to his former employer. This response, while diplomatically worded, confirmed everyone's suspicions that David's problems were more serious than a simple job change. Sunday evening brought an unexpected development. Emma called me from David's studio apartment, where she and Jake were staying for their court-mandated weekend visitation. "Mom, Dad's acting really strange. He keeps asking us questions about your work schedule and whether you've said anything about legal matters. He seems scared." I felt a cold satisfaction at hearing this. David was beginning to understand that his actions had consequences beyond losing his job. "What kind of questions, Emma?" "Like, has anyone from a law firm contacted us? Do we know where you're staying? Have you mentioned anything about money or the house? It's weird, Mom. He's never asked us stuff like that before." "And what did you tell him?" "The truth. That we don't know anything because you don't discuss adult business with us. But Jake and I are getting kind of freaked out. Can you tell us what's actually happening?" I paused, considering how much to reveal to my children. They were 17 now, old enough to understand basic legal concepts, but I didn't want to traumatize them unnecessarily. "Your father made some poor choices that have legal and financial consequences. I'm protecting myself and both of you by making sure those consequences don't damage our future. You don't need to worry about the details, but you should know that everything I'm doing is legal and necessary." "Are you going to take the house away from Dad?" "The house is in both our names, but I've been paying the majority of the mortgage and maintenance for years. During the divorce proceedings, we'll determine fair distribution of assets based on contribution and need. Since you'll be living with me, my housing stability is a priority." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Mom, are you really okay? Like emotionally? Because Dad and Aunt Rebecca are both acting like they're having nervous breakdowns, but you sound like you're discussing a business merger." It was a perceptive observation. I'm handling this situation the same way I handle any complex problem at work, with careful analysis, strategic planning, and systematic execution. Getting emotional would only interfere with achieving the best possible outcome for our family. "But don't you feel anything? Aren't you sad or angry or hurt?" I looked out the window of my corporate apartment at the city lights below. The truth was complicated. I felt many things: betrayal, disappointment, rage, sadness, relief, determination, even a strange kind of liberation. But I had learned to compartmentalize emotions so they didn't interfere with necessary actions. I feel everything, Emma. But I'm not letting those feelings control my decisions. Your father and Rebecca chose to hurt me in the most public and humiliating way possible. Now I'm choosing to respond in a way that protects you, Jake, and me from further damage. After hanging up, I spent another hour reviewing the strategic plan I had developed. Every step had been carefully researched and legally vetted. Margaret Henderson had been thorough in ensuring that my actions, while devastating to David and Rebecca, were completely within legal boundaries. The business loan acceleration was legitimate. I had co-signing rights, and the moral turpitude clause was standard in commercial lending. The evidence I had provided to David's employer was factual and documented. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, with custody arrangements based on stability and the children's best interests. I wasn't destroying David and Rebecca out of spite or emotional revenge. I was systematically removing their ability to cause further damage to my family while rebuilding our lives on a foundation they couldn't undermine. By Monday morning, phase 2 of my strategy would begin. David tried to access our joint checking account to pay the mortgage and discovered it had been legally frozen pending divorce proceedings. He attempted to use his credit card for groceries and found it declined, not because of his job loss, which his company hadn't announced yet, but because I had contacted the credit card company as the primary account holder and reported suspicious activity. Rebecca arrived at her gallery to find a notice from First National Bank taped to the front door. Loan default proceedings would begin immediately unless she could provide $85,000 within 10 business days, the balance of her expansion loan that I had co-signed. My signature on that guarantee had given me certain legal rights, including the ability to trigger an acceleration clause if I could demonstrate that the loan was at risk. A documented affair with a married man, combined with her business partner, me, filing for divorce, certainly qualified as risk factors. But the masterpiece of my strategy revealed itself that afternoon. David's company didn't just fire him, they filed a criminal complaint for misappropriation of corporate funds. The company credit card charges I had documented weren't just ethical violations, they constituted theft. David's romantic dinners with Rebecca had been funded by his employer, making them both complicit in embezzlement. I learned this from my former college roommate Jennifer, who now worked in the district attorney's office. She called me Tuesday evening with a courtesy heads-up. "Elizabeth, I thought you should know David Wilson was arrested this afternoon. Embezzlement charges. The amount isn't huge, but it's enough for felony prosecution. Is everything okay?" I felt a moment of genuine surprise. I had intended to destroy his career and reputation, but criminal charges hadn't been part of my plan. The system had simply taken my evidence and drawn its own conclusions. "Thank you for letting me know, Jen. I appreciate the call. Are you handling this okay? I know divorce is difficult, but if you need anything..." "I'm managing just fine," I said. And I was. That evening, Rebecca finally managed to reach me by calling the company's main number and having them transfer her to my office. "Elizabeth, please. This has gone too far. David made a mistake, but you're destroying innocent people. The gallery is everything to me. I'll lose my livelihood, my reputation, my entire future." I leaned back in my executive chair, looking out at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office. The view was spectacular from the 42nd floor. "Rebecca," I said calmly, "you made a choice to have an affair with my husband. You made a choice to flaunt it on social media. You made a choice to ensure that my children would attend your gallery opening instead of my promotion ceremony. Those weren't mistakes, they were deliberate decisions to humiliate me. But I never meant for you to get hurt." "Of course you did. That was exactly what you meant. You wanted to prove that you could take something away from me, the successful sister who always overshadowed your artistic dreams. Well, congratulations, Rebecca. You succeeded." She was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. Only the cold satisfaction of a strategy executed flawlessly. "What can I do to fix this?" Please, there has to be something. You can accept the consequences of your choices, just like I had to accept the consequences of trusting you and David. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. Margaret, I want to make sure the divorce proceedings include full custody of Emma and Jake. Given David's current legal troubles and the instability Rebecca has brought into their lives, I think we can make a compelling case. Absolutely. A felony conviction will certainly support your position. Are you sure you want full custody? Teenagers can be challenging during divorce proceedings. I thought about Emma and Jake, the children I had raised and supported and loved, who had chosen to attend an art gallery opening instead of celebrating their mother's career achievement. They need stability and structure, I said. I can provide that. David and Rebecca clearly cannot. 3 weeks later, David was sentenced to 6 months in minimum security prison and 2 years of probation. Rebecca lost the gallery and moved back in with our parents, who were so mortified by the scandal that they stopped speaking to her entirely. Our mother called me to apologize for not attending my promotion ceremony, claiming she had no idea what Rebecca and David were planning. I accepted her apology graciously but made it clear that family relationships would be different going forward. Emma and Jake came to live with me in the corporate apartment temporarily, then in the beautiful downtown condo I purchased with my executive compensation package. They were angry at first, blaming me for ruining everything, but teenagers are remarkably adaptable when presented with new realities. Mom, Emma said one evening while doing homework at the kitchen island, why didn't you just get divorced quietly like other parents? I looked up from my laptop, where I was reviewing quarterly reports for my department. Because, Emma, when people betray you, especially people you love, you have 2 choices. You can accept it gracefully and hope they treat you better next time, or you can make sure there are consequences for their actions. I chose consequences. But don't you think you went too far? Dad's in prison and Aunt Rebecca lost everything. Your father embezzled money from his company to fund an affair with my sister. Rebecca used my financial backing to start a business, then used that success to steal my husband and humiliate me publicly. They both made choices that had legal and financial consequences. I didn't create those consequences, I simply documented them. Jake, who had been quietly listening while pretending to study, finally spoke up. Do you hate Dad? I considered the question carefully. No, Jake. I don't hate him. But I don't trust him and I don't respect him. Those are different things. Do you hate us for going to the gallery instead of your ceremony? This question was harder. I looked at my children David's eyes, my stubborn chin, a combination of genetics and choices that had created these complicated human beings I loved desperately despite everything. I was hurt by your choice, I said honestly. But I understand that you were children caught in an adult situation. You're learning, just like everyone else, that choices have consequences. I hope you'll make better ones in the future. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Your promotion ceremony was actually really important, wasn't it? Yes. It was the most important professional moment of my life, and I experienced it alone because the people I loved chose to be somewhere else. We're sorry, Mom, Jake said quietly. We didn't understand. I smiled at them, the first genuinely warm smile I had felt in weeks. I know. And I forgive you. You're 16, not 40. You get to learn from mistakes instead of having them define your entire future. Unlike David and Rebecca, who would spend years rebuilding what they had destroyed in pursuit of a selfish fantasy. 6 months after my promotion ceremony, I stood in the same corporate ballroom where I had been honored alone. But this time, the occasion was different. The company was celebrating the most successful quarterly results in its history, driven largely by the strategic initiatives my department had implemented. This time, Emma and Jake were in the front row, wearing the formal clothes they had promised to wear to my first ceremony. They held a handmade banner that read "World's Best Mom and Executive" in glittery letters that Emma had spent hours perfecting. My parents were there too, having gradually rebuilt their relationship with me after the shock of discovering David and Rebecca's affair. My mother had spent months apologizing, bringing me flowers and home-cooked meals, trying to repair the damage her favoritism toward Rebecca had caused. As I accepted the company's Executive of the Year award, a promotion to senior vice president, and a significant salary increase, the applause felt genuine and earned. But the most satisfying moment came during my acceptance speech. 18 months ago, I learned an important lesson about resilience, I said, looking directly at Emma and Jake. When people disappoint you, when they betray your trust, when they abandon you at your most important moments, you have a choice. You can let their failures define your future, or you can use their betrayal as fuel to build something better. The audience applauded, assuming I was speaking generally about business challenges. I chose to build something better. Better professional relationships based on mutual respect. Better personal relationships based on honesty and accountability. And better self-respect based on the understanding that I deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate my successes instead of sabotaging them. After the ceremony, Jennifer from the DA's office approached me at the reception. "How are you holding up, Elizabeth? I heard David was released from prison last month." He was. He's living in a studio apartment across town and working as a freelance consultant. His felony conviction makes finding corporate employment difficult. Do the kids see him? Supervised visits twice a month. They're still angry with him, but that will fade over time. Children need their fathers, even flawed ones. And Rebecca? I sipped my champagne thoughtfully. She's working at a coffee shop and taking night classes in graphic design. Our parents help her with rent. She sends me cards on holidays, but we don't speak directly. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? It was a question I had been asking myself for months. Forgiveness was complicated when the betrayal had been so calculated and public. I don't think about them much anymore, I said honestly. Forgiveness requires emotional investment, and I've redirected that energy toward building a better life for myself and my children. Jennifer nodded approvingly. You've certainly done that. Senior vice president at 39, full custody of the twins, and this incredible condo downtown. You've built something impressive from the wreckage. She was right. The downtown condo was spectacular, a penthouse with a view of the river and enough space for Emma and Jake to have their own rooms plus a home office where I could work. The mortgage was entirely in my name, funded by my executive salary and the stock options that came with my recent promotion. Emma had decorated her room in the sophisticated style she was developing as she prepared for college applications. Jake had filled his with sports equipment and computer programming books. He was developing an interest in cybersecurity that I was quietly encouraging. They were both thriving academically and socially. The scandal of their parents' divorce had initially made them objects of gossip at school, but teenagers move on quickly when presented with new drama. Now they were simply the Wilson twins with the successful mom who lived in the coolest apartment downtown. "Mom," Emma said as we drove home after the ceremony, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think Dad and Aunt Rebecca really loved each other, or were they just trying to hurt you?" It was a surprisingly mature question from a 17-year-old. I think they were both looking for something they felt was missing in their lives, and they convinced themselves that destroying my marriage was worth finding it. Whether that was love or selfishness, I'll never know. But it wasn't worth it, was it? Look what they lost. I glanced in the rearview mirror at my daughter, who was becoming a thoughtful young woman despite the chaos she had witnessed. No, Emma. It wasn't worth it. But their poor choices gave me the opportunity to build something better for all of us. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you create. Jake, who had been texting friends about the ceremony, looked up from his phone. "Mom, Tyler's dad wants to know if you're dating anyone. He says you're the most successful single mom in town." I laughed, the first genuinely carefree laugh I had experienced in almost a year. "Tell Tyler's dad I'm focusing on raising 2 teenagers and running a corporate department. Dating is not currently on my strategic plan." "But what if someone really amazing asked you out?" Emma pressed. "Someone who wasn't a lying cheater like Dad?" I considered the question. David's betrayal had certainly damaged my ability to trust romantic partners, but it hadn't destroyed my capacity for love or companionship. If someone amazing came along who respected my priorities and appreciated my achievements instead of feeling threatened by them, I might consider it. But they'd have to be pretty spectacular to compete with the life I've built for us. Emma and Jake exchanged a look in the back seat. What? I asked suspiciously. Nothing, Emma said innocently. We just think you deserve someone who shows up to your important moments instead of skipping them for art galleries. Definitely, Jake agreed. And someone who doesn't lie about where they are when they're supposed to be having dinner with clients. I smiled at my children, who had learned difficult lessons about trust and consequences, but were emerging as stronger people because of the experience. You two are pretty amazing yourselves, I said. I'm proud of who you're becoming. As we pulled into the parking garage of our building, I reflected on the journey from that lonely promotion ceremony to this moment of genuine happiness and success. David and Rebecca had thought they were taking something away from me when they chose betrayal over loyalty. Instead, they had forced me to discover how strong I could be when I stopped depending on other people's approval and started building a life based on my own values and capabilities. The quiet corporate executive they had dismissed and betrayed had become a force they never anticipated. And the life I had built from the ashes of their destruction was more successful, more authentic, and more fulfilling than anything we had shared together. 1 year later, I was featured on the cover of Corporate Leadership magazine with the headline "From Betrayal to Breakthrough: How One Executive Turned Personal Crisis into Professional Triumph." The article detailed my rise to senior vice president, the innovative strategies I had implemented that increased company profits by 23%, and my work mentoring other women in corporate leadership. But what caught public attention was the sidebar story about attending my own promotion ceremony alone, then discovering my husband's affair and my systematic response to the betrayal. Elizabeth Wilson represents a new model of female leadership, the article concluded. Rather than accepting victimization, she channeled her intelligence and strategic thinking into rebuilding her life on her own terms. Her story resonates with women who have been underestimated, betrayed, or abandoned by the people they trusted most. The magazine story was picked up by social media, where it went viral under the hashtag #QuietStrength. Women shared their own stories of rebuttal after betrayal, divorce, and professional discrimination. The response was overwhelming. Emma, now a college freshman studying business and psychology, called me from her dorm room. "Mom, have you seen Twitter today? You're like famous. Everyone's talking about your story." I was in my office, reviewing the quarterly reports that would determine my next promotion timeline when she called. "I've been getting interview requests all week," I told her. Apparently, a lot of people identify with the experience of being abandoned by family during important moments. "Are you going to do any interviews?" "I'm considering it. Your father and Rebecca have both contacted my office asking me not to discuss them publicly." There was silence on Emma's line. "Then, what did you tell them?" "I told them that I don't discuss my private life in professional contexts, but I also don't allow other people to dictate my choices anymore. If reporters ask about the divorce, I'll tell the truth factually and without embellishment." Good. They made their choices and they don't get to control the consequences forever. My daughter had developed a remarkably clear understanding of accountability during the past year. "Speaking of choices," I said, "how are your classes going?" "Really well. I'm thinking about majoring in business administration with a focus on crisis management. Turns out I have a talent for helping people rebuild after disasters." I smiled. Emma was developing into exactly the kind of strong, strategic woman I had hoped to raise. "That sounds perfect. You've certainly had a front-row seat to crisis management over the past year." "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you regret how hard you went after Dad and Aunt Rebecca? Some people online are saying you were too ruthless." It was a question I had been asking myself as the story gained public attention. The systematic destruction of David and Rebecca's lives had been thorough and devastating. David was still struggling to rebuild his career with a felony conviction. Rebecca had started over from zero, working retail jobs while trying to pay off the debt from her failed gallery. Emma, they didn't just hurt me. They humiliated me publicly, involved my children in their deception, and attempted to destroy my family for their own selfish desires. I didn't create the consequences they faced, I simply documented their actions and let legal and professional systems respond appropriately. But don't you feel bad that they lost everything? I considered her question carefully. Empathy was important, but so was accountability. I feel bad that they made choices that led to losing everything. But I don't regret refusing to absorb the damage from their decisions quietly. For too many years, women have been expected to accept betrayal gracefully and rebuild silently. I chose to rebuild loudly and let the consequences fall where they belonged. I'm proud of you, Mom. You taught Jake and me that we don't have to accept being treated badly just because we love someone. After Emma hung up, I sat in my office looking out at the city skyline. The view from the 45th floor was even better than it had been from my previous office. The promotion to executive vice president had come with a larger office, a significant salary increase, and stock options that would secure Emma and Jake's college education and my own retirement. More importantly, it had come with respect. My colleagues, my subordinates, and my superiors all understood that I was someone who delivered results and expected professional treatment in return. The woman who had once attended corporate ceremonies alone was now someone whose presence commanded attention and whose absence was noticed immediately. That evening, I had dinner with Margaret Henderson, my divorce lawyer, who had become a friend during the legal proceedings. Any regrets about how we handled David and Rebecca? She asked over wine and pasta at our favorite restaurant. People keep asking me that question. I think they expect me to feel guilty about the systematic way we dismantled their lives. But you don't? I thought about David in his studio apartment, working freelance jobs and struggling to rebuild his reputation. I thought about Rebecca, starting over at 35 with no business, no relationship, and no support system except our disappointed parents. I feel satisfied, I said honestly. They made choices that were designed to hurt me and humiliate me. I made choices that were designed to protect myself and my children. The difference is that my choices were legal, strategic, and focused on building something better. Margaret nodded approvingly. You're one of the most mentally healthy divorce clients I've ever represented. Most people either collapse into victimhood or burn everything down in rage. You did neither. I got angry. But I channeled the anger into something productive. That's what made you so effective. You never let emotion override strategy. As I drove home to the penthouse where Emma and Jake would be video calling me from their respective colleges, I reflected on the journey from that lonely promotion ceremony to this moment of genuine success and contentment. David and Rebecca had thought they were taking something away from me. Instead, they had forced me to discover capabilities I didn't know I possessed and to build a life that was entirely my own creation. The quiet executive they had underestimated had become exactly the kind of woman I had always been capable of being: strong, strategic, successful, and uncompromising about being treated with respect. They had made their choice to betray me. I had made my choice to rebuild better. The scoreboard wasn't even close. This story resonates with anyone who has ever been underestimated, betrayed, or abandoned by the people they trusted most. Elizabeth Wilson's journey from victim to victor demonstrates that quiet strength, strategic thinking, and refusal to accept poor treatment can transform even the most devastating betrayal into the foundation for a better life. Sometimes the people who hurt us do us the greatest favor by showing us what we're truly capable of when we stop depending on their approval and start building our own success. The quiet ones are often the most dangerous opponents because they watch, they plan, and they strike with precision when the moment is right. Elizabeth Wilson walked alone once, but she walked away with everything they lost.